In today's episode, employees' lunches are their personal property and the company is not responsible for lost or stolen personal items. I did to my neighbor what they did to others. So let's get started. Employees' lunches are their personal property and the company is not responsible for lost or stolen personal items. Nobody likes a lunch thief, and I had one of the most aggressive at my office. There were rumors for a few months leading up to the inciting incident of someone going around and taking people's lunches. Just about every day someone different would complain that their lunch was missing. It even happened to me once or twice, but I figured, hey, it's a big office, a few people are probably just careless and grab the wrong lunch and are too embarrassed to bring it back, or someone else packs their lunch and they don't know what's in there, so it's not obvious they have the wrong one, or whatever. Most people just brought brown bags with their names on it anyways, or identical Rubbermaid Tupperware with a little piece of labeled tape on the side. It was easy enough to mix it up. I had accidentally grabbed a wrong lunch once or twice, but I'd noticed before I got it open. I thought I was just more careful, or even just not as busy as some other people in the building. However, other people weren't as forgiving, and a quorum made complaints to HR. They were blown off. Personally, at the time, I thought it was all much ado about nothing. But then it began. My wife enrolled in a French cooking class online, and just about every day, I was bringing fancy gourmand leftovers in for lunch. You'd think I was picking up a to-go bag from a Michelin-starred bistro on the way in each morning. She really threw herself into the coursework. There were no problems for about 2 weeks, maybe 3, until one day my lunch went missing. Considering what delicacies I had to look forward to, I was pretty miffed, but I did a once-over around the break room and didn't see anyone eating my lunch, so figured someone grabbed my bag by accident earlier, saw how good things looked, and realizing it was their lucky day didn't bring it back to the fridge. I wrote the mysterious stranger off as an A****, but accepted the loss and looked forward to dinner that night instead. Next day I write my name on my lunch in extra bold lettering, jam the bag into the back of the fridge, and feel peace of mind. I get there come break time, nope, it's gone. I was pretty upset, but I figured it was a stroke of bad luck, and left it at that. What else could I do? However, third day, out of an abundance of caution, I kept my lunch at my desk. A pain, because I had to eat it fairly early in the day to avoid spoilage, but at least I'd know where it was. I got up to take care of some business down the hall, and when I came back, yep, my lunch was gone. Unfortunately, that didn't help me narrow it down much at all, because my desk is centrally located, so everyone's constantly passing by. At that point there was no possibility of the theft being arbitrary, so I approached HR and filed a complaint. Their response, practically verbatim, was, employees' lunches are their personal property, and the company is not responsible for lost or stolen personal items. The following day my wife packed a cream-based soup that really had to be refrigerated. I was passing by the break room to check on my lunch practically every 5 minutes. Somehow it still managed to disappear. I was irate at this point and returned to HR and really blew my top. The best they could do was send a memo around about remembering to check the name on your lunch when you remove it from the fridge, but they made very clear that it was a routine memo, and in no way related to my complaints, which were not their jurisdiction, so not an admission of responsibility, because my lunch was my own personal problem. The only suitable alternative to packing a lunch available in the building are these wretched shrink-wrapped ham and cheese sandwiches from a vending machine. They've been marinating in the heat for God knows how long, and the bread is as stale as corkboard, and the meat is rancid, and there's gluey mayo smushed into the center. It's a relic of the old office tenants, I'm pretty sure. I vented daily to my wife, but her only idea was to start bringing a regular sandwich and apple again to dissuade the thief and get him to move on to other lunches. So, determined to prevent this low-life scum from downgrading the quality of my lunch, I hatched an elaborate plan. Then the pandemic hit, and I forgot all about this whole saga. I worked remotely for months and months. Then we returned, and after all that had happened globally, this was the last thing on my mind. But I got to the break room the first day back, frustrated from having to wear a button-up and tie after months of working in pajamas, sore from my desk chair, and exhausted from small talk, only to find my lunch was gone. This was a particularly sore point because my wife and I divorced between my last lunch and work and the present one. So I did not appreciate being reminded of any past threads involving her. I pretty much flew into a blind rage at that point. Especially seeing that stupid worthless memo about checking the lunch bag names posted in the break room, feeling so helpless, and so hungry, and so alone as it was me and my lunch against the world. I stormed out and was determined to return the next day with a plan. So, I came in the following day, with an empty lunch bag. And I checked closely to be sure no one was watching and I switched the contents of the HR person's lunch bag into my bag. So now their lunch appeared to be my lunch. They'd packed a regular brown bag, so I just discarded that, and I left, and I waited. I knew this was a pretty big gamble, because it was contingent on the theory that the thief was avoiding me while having lunch, but not wary of anyone else. So would eat out in the open if there were no risk of bumping into me. So I made a big show of going around the office announcing that I was headed out for a meeting, and I wouldn't be back until at least 3 p.m. I even went to the trouble of moving my car out of the lot to a space 2 streets over, where I then sat in my car and worked remotely for several hours before sneaking into the building up the back stairway. I then sat in the stairwell just outside the break room, where you can hear chatter can't be seen, and after about 20 to 30 minutes of waiting, I heard it. The sweetest sound I'll ever hear in the office. HR, what the heck, Kyle, that's my lunch. Lunch thief. Nah, it's not your name on the bag. HR, give me that. I'm assuming grabs bag and sees my name. HR, yeah, let's head to my office for a chat. The HR rep later called me in as well and said they were aware of my break room hijinks, but it was obvious that the point still came across loud and clear. They warned me that it was a violation of policy to move another employee's lunch. It took every ounce of self-control for me to keep from retorting I thought our lunches were our personal property and the company was not responsible for them being lost or stolen. They informed me they'd located the thief and things would be handled accordingly. But better than whatever write-up they might be able to issue Kyle, his reveal as the lunch thief occurred in front of the whole break room. So word quickly spread as to who had been stealing everyone's lunches earlier last year, and he is now the office pariah. He was in line for a promotion. The promotion is indefinitely off the table. And I also earned brownie points for exposing him, though more than I'm satisfied with are being attributed to HR. At the end of the day though, I didn't do this for this credit, or even the sweet revenge. I did it to get my lunches back. I did to my neighbor what they did to others. To start, I bought a house with the intention of doing a flip. When I moved in, the self-appointed block captain let me know who they were the first day. Sadly, they were my next-door neighbors. I tried to be friendly, but listening to them I realized how horrible they were and tried to keep still be civil. My significant other kept saying just wait for it to be our turn. They bragged about, though, their contacts with the city, forcing people to make improvements on their houses, getting undesirable renters out of the houses, and just harassing people in general. As I worked on flipping my house, the wife became a worse thorn in my side. To start, she demanded I put up a fence so people would quit cutting through my yard and scaring her. Then, her and the husband demanded I take care of the weeds in the yard or they will do it and bill me. After that, a storm, a tree scraped their shingles, and they asked for $1,200 to replace them. The tree was there before I moved in, and by co-ed they are responsible to cut back the branches to the property line. When I wouldn't pay, they had a relative jump my fence and cut the trees down. Needless to say, I began to ignore to them, so she became a constant gnat and moved on to another target. Then one day, as I was tearing down my deck for a patio, I realized she put a feral cat colony on a section of my property. I had wondered why all the stray cats were around, and I finally found out. I reached out to the city and demanded it be removed, but they said she followed the law on getting it in place. As I tried to get it shut down, she began unhinged behavior, from standing in her window staring at me, yelling out the window at me to hitting the fence with items to scare my dog. Here my revenge started. I started by filing a HRO/harassment restraining order against the wife and had it granted ex parte with the evidence I provided, or course she contested as it was defamatory to her character. Before the hearing the husband tried to physically intimidate me. So I filed one against him, and it was also granted ex parte. In the hearing it came up that there was an HRO against the husband as well, they dogged being served until I had it published as a means of service. I started to make complaints about them and their house. Also, I made police calls when necessary. As I did this the other neighbors began to realize they could do to them what they had done to them and others. For example, as I was having my front door replaced, needing a building work permit. I knew they were doing internal remodeling, so I called a city inspector, and they were fined for not having permit. As she ranted at the inspector, he looked at my window, and saw I had mine displayed. Their back porch became horrid, so I made another call to a city inspector, and they had to clear it out. Then they had a broken window on the porch door, so I called an inspector, and they had to replace the door. Next the paint on their house was peeling, so I called an inspector, and they had to repaint. The inspector also found the wood underneath was rotted along with their front porch was sloping. So, they needed to fix the front porch, sections of wood and repaint. Through all this they had up cameras to prove they were not doing the things I said, i.e. hitting the fence. They also pointed a camera at my backyard. As it was legal to point a camera into my yard and a part of my HRO was her intrusive watching behaviors, I gave the camera the middle finger on my way to and from my garage. When she complained, with the city tiring of her, their response was she was admitting to intrusively watching me. The fight over the cat colony came to an end when I realized one of the cats had a serious disease, and I began to capture them and turn them into animal control. Don't worry, animal control was part of the feral cat program, so they would not be put down, but the neighbor would have to pay a fine to get each cat out or have the colony closed. Finally I caught the sick one and it had rabies. Part of the program was for her to capture each new cat, have it vaccinated. Something she admitted to willing not doing on her GoFundMe for the colony. I soon had the GoFundMe shut down when I provided the evidence she was not using the funds as she stated they were going to be used. The city now had to act to close the colony. The person at Animal Control who wouldn't respond to my complaints was fired. The neighbors called in a city mediator who we met with, presented all the evidence, and said we would not meet with them, and provided extremely racist tweets they made about neighbors. The city cut ties with them as community leaders. With their power to bully gone and having spent what I can only imagine in fines and repairs, like they did to numerous other neighbors. After 14 years they sold their house and moved out, way out to the suburbs where they only have one neighbor about 50 yards away. They knew I was wrapping up my flip and would be out in less than a year. Without being able to bully their neighbors, with people having their back, they seemed to have no further reason to stay. Needless to say, I did several more things to wear them down. Finally, when I listed my house, it was sold while theirs was still on the market. As a final FU to them, I reported to the county they had both the new and old house listed as their homestead, meaning they were paying less in property taxes, so they got hit in with more fines on my way out.